Welcome to DeFi by Design, where we talk all things blockchain and cryptocurrency while striving to educate, empower, and enrich.
What's up, guys? It's your boy Andy. Real quick, just want to tell you about the sponsors that make the DeFi by Design podcast possible. First, we have 𝗷𝗵𝗶𝗴𝗵. 𝗷𝗵𝗶 is a non-custodial money market protocol where you can go and leverage your assets and earn interest. So you can go in there and deposit about 10 or 20 assets, ETH, any stable coins, wrap Bitcoin, a whole bunch link, and you can lend them and you can borrow tokens to go long, to go short, to earn interest. Head over to app.𝗷𝗵.com. Check it out. They have V2 is coming soon. Check out 𝗷𝗵𝗶. Next, we have DeFi. DeFi is a layer 2 gasless decentralized exchange on Ethereum. They use Starkware to conduct their trades on layer 2. The token 𝗵𝗵𝗶𝗵𝗵 has a liquidity mining scheme ongoing, and they have a bunch of cool stuff coming in. So if you want to trade on L2 in order books, not just swaps, check out DeFi. They're awesome. With that being said, let's get right back to the show. I hope you guys enjoy. And again, check out 𝗷𝗵𝗶 at app.𝗷𝗵.com and DeFi at @DeFi.com to lend and borrow and trade on L2. Cheers, guys. What's going on, guys? Welcome to episode 17 of the DeFi by Design podcast. Of course, it's your host, Andy, with co-host Robbie here today. And we are speaking with a special guest. We won't give too many details quite yet. Oh, who am I kidding? We're here with the Melon Protocol team member. Her name is Mona. She's an absolute beast, and she's going to tell us all about what's going on in DeFi at Melon and all sorts of cool stuff today. The markets are going nuts. Bitcoin's pushing all-time high. Ethereum's running. I mean, there's been more rug pulls, more hacks, more exploits, more crazy stuff than ever, and we're still here, guys. Robbie, how you doing today? Are you feeling good? Are you excited?
Absolutely. Super excited as always, not just because markets are pumping, but we're here. It's a beautiful day in Florida, and we're talking to Melon Protocol. There's a lot of great stuff coming from Melon. I've seen them in the crypto industry for a while now, so I know they're building, I know they're continuing to develop, and they're always just pushing the limits of what you can do for decentralized asset management. So I'll pass it over to Mona, let her introduce herself, and we can kick it off on some interesting developments happening over at Melon.
Hey guys, it's great to be here. Thanks for having me. Yeah, so I guess as a kind of quick intro, I am at the other side of the world from you guys. I'm sitting here in Switzerland, hiding out in the Alps, and I am working away on our V2 release for Melon Protocol. Like you said, we've been around for a while. We were probably one of the first DeFi protocols. We launched as a first initiative, we launched 4.5 years ago in August 2016. Prior to that, I was in traditional finance. I know that's a bit boring compared to the background of other people, but maybe it will come in a little bit valuable for what we're doing. So I was in traditional finance for nearly 15 years. I'd say 14 years to be precise. I did nearly a decade as a trader, market maker, and prop trader at Goldman. And I then moved into hedge funds and ran a long-short equity fund for a few years within a bigger hedge fund, and then tried to launch my own. So yeah, I'll leave it there.
That's sick. Actually, I think you'd be surprised. A lot of people in the DeFi space, I feel like, started in the quote unquote TradFi space.
Yeah, I don't know. I think there is a big mix. I think there's like a lot of younger people coming in who don't come from TradFi, maybe more developer backgrounds. And I think actually DeFi is lacking more TradFi. If you think about some of the more exotic things that are happening now when it comes to options, derivatives, synthetic products, etc., designing, what we always refer to in DeFi as a better financial system requires understanding what really, what was wrong kind of with traditional finance too, not just like on the surface, like, okay, yeah, we all know Lehman happened and we all know LTCM happened, etc. But do we really know like the inner workings of what happened and what went wrong and how we can avoid them going forward instead of creating an even bigger mess the second time around?
Yeah, definitely. And there's a certain type of coin or certain type of product that gets launched depending on where some of the founders or the main team comes from. A lot of these meme coins, the yield farming coins, and that aspect of DeFi, that's more the gamified industry. And I think that's more from the developer startups. But the TradFi and more traditional finance people are really solving some critical problems, and they're bringing in those more mature aspects of traditional finance.
Yeah, totally.
Hey, Mona, so real quick, what is your outlook on DeFi versus TradFi in terms of like creating a new system? Are you more of like the
let's go on this bankless revolution and try to build something that, you know, we can kind of support ourselves and do like our own system? Or is it more just like create a better system that is already in place, but just on the blockchain using like kind of a Ethereum or permissionless protocols? Like there's kind of a split in how some people are in terms of like what they see. I feel like there's like the revolutionaries almost, and then there's also just like the build a better system that is going to work better for like, you know, like where do you kind of stand like on like a personal ideological level? Like how'd you get there?
Yeah, so I don't think they need to be totally, mutually exclusive. I think they can kind of, those two worlds can live in parallel. The vision and the view that I've always taken is we're building infrastructure. And I think we're one of the few people in the space building asset management infrastructure, which means we're agnostic about, we're not trying to do product. There's tons of that. We're trying to do just the building blocks and giving people the tools to enable themselves to build anything in DeFi however they like. Now, I think it's really important to talk about the D in DeFi for a second. So people seem to see decentralized as like black and white, and I see it as a spectrum. And I don't take a view on where people should be on that spectrum. I take the view that every person should decide how they want to manage their finances and where they want to put their money. If somebody feels more comfortable in a centralized ecosystem or like in kind of the middle of that spectrum, that's fine with me. If somebody wants ultra decentralized, that's also fine with me. Well, only thing I care about is making sure we have the infrastructure to provide people the tools to build anything they want on that spectrum.
Yeah, to be able to have a choice is important. I was speaking to 2 weeks ago, this OG Bitcoin miner guy. His name is Joseph Weinberg. I'm not sure if you ever heard of him. He's working on a really cool project, but basically he was saying the same thing. The most important part about, you know, that kind of question and that idea is like, yeah, the ability for you personally, what makes you the most comfortable, you know, to have that choice.
Yeah, because if we start trying to, if people like me start trying to dictate to people what they should and shouldn't do, then that's not any better than the current financial system. I think the best thing we can do is give people the freedom of choice.
Yeah. And we've seen that manipulated in the past in traditional finance when, like you said, you're forcing a choice onto someone, but that's not the case in decentralized finance because accessibility is just completely transformed. I think that's one of the main benefits of decentralized finance compared to traditional finance.
Yeah, like I've seen a few of my friends recently like access DeFi. Like so once they like pass the initial hurdle of like buying crypto and figuring out how to use a wallet.
And MetaMask and stuff.
And MetaMask, that seems to be the hardest hurdle these days though. But like once you're actually there and you like enter, I don't know, a trade in Uniswap or, you know, invest in a Melon fund or whatever, that their next reaction is, what, is that it? Am I done? Because there's no, you know, lengthy onboarding, there's no questionnaire, there's no sign up and get a login address, there's no give me your phone number, there's nothing like that. And they're just like, wow, this is refreshingly easy and refreshingly, by the way, it wasn't easy a year ago, but like obviously like DeFi's interfaces and user experience has been improving rapidly in the last few months. But yeah, the next reaction I get is, wow, this is so accessible.
Yeah, I still think there's a big gap though. There's like the people that buy crypto on Coinbase versus the people that are like, okay, let's create this wallet right on MetaMask and then let's go ahead and be a DeFi user. And it's almost like that's kind of, I feel like what Rob and I are trying to accomplish like with this whole project of DeFi. And let's touch on Melon and kind of what you guys are doing after this. But basically, like we've seen that there's a big gap of like, okay, there's a lot of users who are just buying crypto and holding it, you know, in exchanges or just, you know, in a cold wallet. But there is a group that like could also come over, and I don't want to say to the dark side, but like to the DeFi side. And so like, you know, that's kind of like what we're trying to accomplish. And like, again, there's almost like stages here of like, you know, what, like where people are at. And so, as you said, it's kind of cool just to see people come on board, use it and be like, okay, like that was easy. That's a good sign.
Yeah, totally. I think that's a really good point. And I think I'm glad people like you were working on that because the space needs more of it.
Yeah, appreciate it. All right. So Rob, obviously you and I know what the Melon Protocol is. We've seen it. We've checked it out. We're super excited about it. So could you give the listeners, Mona, a explanation of what Melon is, what you guys are set out to accomplish, how you guys are doing it, and just kind of like, you know, what's coming up. And yeah, just if I was completely new and I had no idea, you know, what is Melon?
Yeah, sure. So Melon serves two types of users. I think it serves people who are, people who like to invest or to trade their own portfolio, people who like to track their performance, people who maybe one day are really passionate about investing and maybe want to switch careers into becoming investors as a profession. And today, the industry doesn't really allow for people who are great investors to just leap into the role of launching their own fund or launching their own investment product, because people in traditional finance, barriers to entry are really high. So, if you were kind of working in in a bakery and you're like, I love investing. I freaking love it. I go home and all I think about investing. I'm in the bakery and all I can think about is investing. And you start investing. And then, a couple of years later, you're like, I'm really fed up working in this bakery. I want to launch my own fund and make a career out of this. In TradFi, everyone would laugh at you and just be like, I'm not investing in a baker. And then you would be like, wait, I was up 50% last year and I was up 100% the year before. And your response will be like, well, prove it to me. And how can you prove it? Because you don't know when this guy bought or sold. You have no audited track record. You have no, it's very hard to keep track of the trading that this guy has done. He didn't have any constraints. You don't know how much leverage he took, blah, 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 blah. And generally speaking, people are really biased towards past career, whatever, and all these credentials that we know now are not always that important. So what Melon really provides is someone like that could basically manage their portfolio in a very easily accessible way. So very cheaply, very, few clicks to set up a fund, costs you probably under $100 to deploy a fund. And you basically don't have to pay much to manage it compared to what it would cost you in traditional finance. And now you're trading for your portfolio, you're investing for yourself. And you're basically building what is like an on-chain audited transparent track record on the blockchain. So the next time someone comes along and says, well, you don't know how to invest, you can say to them, well, actually, this is my blockchain-based track record. Try to, I dare you to challenge it. And this, I think, will become more and more of a standard as people get more educated on what on-chain asset management is. And I think that this will become like the badge of honor that you wear when you want to go out and fundraise for your products. And I think that it's a little bit too early to see this now because nobody really cares about 6-month track records. But as we start to get 1 year, 2 year, 3 year track records, those start to become incredibly valuable. If you can say, wow, that baker has performed 5 years straight and blown, basically his performance has outperformed everybody by 50%, you're going to be like, actually, I kind of want to speak to this baker, right? And I want to back him. So this is kind of the idea for managers. It empowers them. It's simple. It's very cost efficient. Anyone can access it as long as you have a little bit of savings. You can start by managing your own capital, until you build some confidence and some track record. And then you can kind of start to aggregate that by, don't even have to do much because it's all on chain. So people can discover you quite easily. The flip side of the other kind of user we have are the investors in the ecosystem who are can now come onto the portal. They can basically browse for funds according to performance, track record, length of that track record, volatility, etc., Sharpe ratio, all the kind of metrics that an investor would typically look for. Now, for the first time in the history of kind of asset management, they have full transparency. They have a huge database, which is backed with data on the blockchain. And the funds are accessible because in traditional finance, you probably need to write minimum ticket size, 50,000, 100, 250, whatever, depending on the fund. So yeah, I think it's a big deal because it's cheap, easy, simple, and it removes complexity. And most importantly, empowers people to do what they love, which is investing.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I mean, that was a lot to take in. Yeah, it's a decentralized asset management platform that has basically portfolio managers, investors, and it basically allows all of this to coexist in an ecosystem built on Ethereum using smart contracts in a trustless manner. All the buzzwords, right? But that is how it works. Could you speak to the custodial nature? How does that work?
Yeah, so I'll just mention also, because you mentioned on trustless, and that's actually a really important part too. So trustless, I think, is one of the most exciting things about DeFi, because I talked about the barriers to entry, but actually what creates the high barriers to entry is the fact that you need all these financial intermediaries in traditional finance to establish trust between fund managers and investors. And with Melon, we kind of removed that need for the financial intermediaries and we established trust between the two players instead with smart contracts. So that's a really, really, really important point you brought up. On the custody side, we also remove that intermediary. So traditionally, funds would need to have a custodian, usually by law, required by law. And the reason they have a custodian is to make sure that they are behaving in a way which, like, let's say you set up a fund and the fund was supposed to invest in US equities. Your investors are investing with you on that basis. So they want to make sure that you never go out and buy Japanese equities, for example, because that's not what they want exposure to. They're betting on you because you have promised them that you'll generate alpha in the US stock market. So the custodian's job is to make sure that you guys don't go and invest your money in stuff that you aren't supposed to invest in. And that's not just Japanese equities. That could be buying a yacht for yourself and your friends, going out for parties, whatever. And basically just making sure that you're spending the money as you should be spending it. With Melon, we don't need the custodian because the custodian is actually the smart contract. So you basically have the funds stored in a vault like smart contract, and that when you're customizing your fund setup, you're basically customizing the rule sets by how investors' funds can and cannot be spent. And those rules are enforced by the smart contract, which is why we don't need any of the financial intermediaries anymore. All we really need is the smart contracts, and they help establish trust between the two players, which is pretty awesome.
Yeah, that was one of my biggest takeaways from using the V1 platform a little bit, was the rule set and how managers are constrained by these rules. And not only is there, a slew of different funds that investors can choose from on Melon, but they all have different rule sets where investors can pick and choose what they're looking for and what exposure they want in terms of crypto. And there's all these different options for them. It speaks to, not only the expansiveness of Melon, but all the different options. Like, it kind of reminds me, if you've been to Chipotle, I don't know if they got that in Switzerland, but there's like a few options, right? There's only you can only get corn or guac, there's only a few ingredients there. But when you start making these combinations, it explodes, and there's all these different possibilities that end up falling out of it. So it seems like those different flavors of hedge funds are really going to give people some more access, and they're going to kind of enlighten people as to what their money's actually invested in.
Yeah, totally. I think that's spot on, and I think that's something that people maybe unconsciously have craved for a really long time.
Yeah.
I know that,
and it's something that might be
be
lacking right now.
Yeah. No, I was just saying, I know that I've always wanted to start a fund, and there's been no other easier way than like this on-chain idea. Like, when I saw this, like, it was groundbreaking, honestly. I was like, wow.
That's great to hear.
Yeah, like, it was super cool. And I know Rob's the same way, because I think Rob tried to start, a similar idea through like the traditional route. And Rob, you can, if you want to tell us a bit about the story, like, I'm sure it was probably a big hassle versus, just setting it up on chain.
Yeah, because we were trying to operate under certain exceptions, and we were able to do so, but it took documents, 20, 30-page documents, and talking extensively with some different players in the industry to try to navigate that regulation. I think we're going to start to see that regulation kind of fit the DeFi narrative a little bit, and it might loosen up its strings, but it's certainly the case where just logging in, spending a couple $100, executing some smart contracts, I mean, that's a far cry easier from any type of setup that's going on in the traditional industry. And like we're saying, it's much more verifiable, which is one of the main benefits of blockchain as well, over just cryptocurrencies. But if you can verify the performance, normally that takes audits, but everything is automated in the Melon protocol. So it takes the concept of traditional finance, breaks it down, and then automates it so that it's easier to use, and it's easier for anyone to get into.
Yeah,
it's a low
totally.
barrier of entry.
What I find, I'm smiling because I'm thinking, like, one thing you said was it was like 20, 30-page documents and like a huge hassle, and you were trying to operate under an exemption. Imagine you were trying to operate under the full, the full license like that.
Yeah.
You get people complaining about hundreds and hundreds of pages of documents and $100,000 fees as well from lawyers and setup fees.
Yeah, 20 and 30-page documents was just the start. But I know there's funds out there that need to put out reports, hundreds of pages, and it takes, all the effort to put that together, where I really doubt an investor is going to read through the couple 100-page document that is supposed to, get them to understand what they're actually investing in. Whereas in Melon, it's put right there for you, and it's visual, and you can just sort through it very easily.
Yeah.
So what we're speaking about right now is basically regulatory arbitrage, right? So basically, there is this element of ease and convenience that comes with being able to do things on chain in this decentralized, trustless manner, which centralized companies, LLCs, corporations, and they don't have this ability because of that nature. But as you said, Robbie, the regulations are coming. So I'm really curious to hear your perspective, Mona, on kind of how you feel ideologically about the regulations within DeFi. It doesn't necessarily have to be just about Melon, but I'm wondering kind of how you feel about, how we as a DeFi community, should we make a stand and try to, create our own ideas of regulations, or should we just continue in this wild, wild west manner? Should we act first, or should we wait to try to see what the governments or the SEC or the world economic, all the regulatory bodies do, right? I'm curious as to how you feel about in Melon or in DeFi, how do you see the ideal regulations playing out? What is your ideologies about that?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. I mean, I've always been of the view that I want to be on the front foot speaking to regulators and lawmakers from day one, because I feel like if we're not, then the people who will be speaking to regulators and lawmakers will be people like Jamie Dimon and his friends, and they'll be saying things like, we don't want DeFi to succeed because DeFi basically disrupts them. That's basically where all the power lies today. So in 2017, a group of DeFi players and myself co-founded the Multi-Chain Asset Managers Association, which we dub as 𝗵𝗵, 𝗵𝗵.global. And that's basically what we've been trying to do, is basically lobby for on-chain asset management, give DeFi, protocols that are asset management related, a voice, a unified voice. And we've kind of tried to respond to as many consultation papers as we can. We try to position favorably for DeFi, and basically, we make the point that it doesn't make sense to regulate it at all right now. If it ever does make sense to regulate DeFi, then probably it doesn't make sense to regulate it how traditional finance has been regulated for years, because all the assumptions are, turned upside down, as you said earlier, Robbie. And basically, the idea instead is if you want to regulate sensibly based on the new assumptions. For example, should I don't know, should there be better information out there? Should should it be legal to deploy a protocol without fully auditing it? Should it, all of these kind of things. I mean, they're just random questions that are coming out in my head, but wouldn't that make more sense rather than going after, trying to squeeze DeFi into a bunch of really long and useless laws that were created for a totally different system and don't solve the problems they were designed to solve with DeFi?
Yeah, it takes a completely new naming system where it almost seems like regulators are lazy and they don't want to do the work, or they're just uninformed. And that's why
I don't think they're lazy, and I actually think they're very well informed. I think that regulators are just not in a very great position, because if they say yes, you can do everything, and it goes wrong, then they get the blame from government. And if they say no, you can't do anything, they basically have no upside whatever they do. So for them, may as well stay, if they say you can do it and nothing goes wrong, nobody's going to give them the credit for it. So they're basically just in this terrible situation, which is kind of why it really needs to come from policy and from the top, not from the regulator stance.
Yeah. And again, I was speaking to the OG miner guy, and he was saying the same thing. His company is focused on the regulations of basically bringing crypto to the mainstream, and that's what they're doing a lot right now. And I applaud you for attempting with your organization for the past few years, in the same kind of thing, because that's basically what we need to take this from a little community world to like, real world. It's like that is the biggest next step to accomplish. And I think you're right. I think we have to take the proactive nature. Okay, this is something that we're starting. We're using this as a career. We're building basically a new system. We're basically creating money, because that's whenever we create tokens, we're pretty much creating money. So it's like, okay, so we're doing this, and like, we have to find that happy middle ground. We have to find that like happy middle ground, which is ultimately not easy to do, because the way that we see it is probably a lot different than the way that the regulators see it. So it's just kind of like it's almost like a game of like hot potato until we find like a happy medium.
Yeah, totally.
Well, I don't know where Robbie went, but hope he's all good. His internet was a bit choppy, but we got about 5 or 10 minutes left anyway, so let's just wrap it up, and then he'll just hop on, in the Telegram group or
Sounds
something.
good.
Yeah. So another thing that I'm super interested with Melon specifically is kind of during like the DeFi summer, things were crazy. But the craziest part was just gas. Like, I'm sure you've got this conversation. I'm sure that you guys have had ridiculous amounts of team calls about this problem. So just like, how are you guys trying to solve it? What is the problem? How bad has it affected, like, how are you guys solving it?
Yeah. So, V2 is like, as lean as we could get, really. We ruthlessly questioned every single contract. We rebuilt it from scratch. We really asked ourselves, does this component need to be on chain? Does that component need to be on chain? And then when we thought we'd found a good path, we'd start all over again, and then basically try to chop. So I think that we're in a nice place with V2, because we have made some extreme gas cost savings at a protocol level. And that should ultimately benefit our users. Having said that, the gas spike we saw over the summer was definitely a big hindrance. And, I don't think it's good for anyone to see that going forward, especially with trading, because I think that's something we can't really control too much. There's a limit to how much we can cut those costs. So we've done what we can at the protocol level. In early next year, after the V2 release, our focus will probably shift towards layer 2 research and optimizations we can make there. And from then on, we'll see, we've been looking at the gas token and how we could implement that so that managers could use it as a hedge. And I think like with all those, a combination of all of those three things, we'll be back to where we should be, very lean and kind of much more immune to future gas spikes.
Yeah. And the thing that wasn't even a gas spike. Like, that was like gas spikes over like 2 months. Like,
yeah,
it
was like brutal, and it was really brutal to watch. And I remember the first month, like, our user numbers just kept growing. Nobody seemed to be like that bothered by it. And then I think in August, we reached deploying a fund on V1 was like $3,000. When we first, it was embarrassing. Like, when we first started saying, when we first deployed V1, we were saying like, in total, Melon fees and Ethereum gas, it's like under $50. And so and then activity just died at that point.
I remember I was trying to start a DAO on like Aragon or something, and it was like $486. And I was like, oh my goodness, looks like I'm not starting a DAO today.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
But I don't think that those gas prices are ever going to happen again. I guess they very well could, and they could go to 1,000 Gwei, but that was just because there was literally a ridiculous amount of farms popping up. Like, like you could yield farm 24 hours a day over summer. Like, it was absurd how many transactions were happening at once because of all the APYs that were going nuts.
Yeah, true.
Like, that was just absurd.
A lot of those strategies, Andy, would rebalance. So some of the pools and the vaults, they would all send transactions themselves, in addition to all of the farmers and the users actually sending transactions between them. So
all the strategies of like Yearn and stuff like that, and like the token sets and stuff, like they all rebalance, and
that all takes transactions on chain.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. All right. Well, we are about out of time. We have about 5 minutes left. Rob, shall we do some questions that we're curious about?
Yeah, for sure. I know I dropped for a little bit, but I'd love to start it off and talk about the Melon Token MLN. Just quick rundown. What's the value proposition and the token distribution of the Melon token?
Yeah, so actually really interesting timing to ask that, because I don't know if you've been following, but 𝗵𝗶𝗴𝗵 was submitted earlier this year for a token kind of economic upgrade by Tom Shaughnessy from Delphi Digital, 𝗬𝗵 Paribus, and Chris Meneses from Moonchain Capital. And the idea was really to change the idea of charging one-off setup fees, or one-off fees at investment, to a broader AUM-based fee, which is recurring. And they argued that this would help accrue value to the token much faster if we can get AUM growth up, and therefore more directly link the usage and the success of our managers to the success and the value of the token. So we like that. And the council recently voted yes towards this proposal. The details are being ironed out. But yeah, so as well as V2 launching, hopefully still Q4 this year, will also be implementing 𝗵𝗶𝗴𝗵, which you can read all about on GitHub. I think if you Google 𝗵𝗶𝗴𝗵 GitHub, there's like a really vibrant discussion from so many different players in our community, which give a sense to where it's going. And our official comments to that proposal are on our Medium page, Melon Protocol.
Yeah. And excuse us for not being active protocol politicians here, but the Melon token is also a governance token in that, it allows you to vote on these proposals.
No, it's not a governance token. Actually,
Okay,
so Melon is actually governed by a technically skilled and user representative DAO. It's 11 members.
Okay.
In order to join that DAO, you have to be very technically skilled. So we have 3 or 4 auditors on that council now who are very highly regarded. We have a formal verification expert. We have a layer 2 expert like 𝗵𝗆𝗏 from Diversify, who kind of is one of the pioneers in layer 2. And obviously built FNX, and Diversify was at Bitfinex before that. So we're, and then we have the user representatives. These are kind of some of the bigger users of our protocol who got nominated onto the council by other users, Felix Hartman and 𝗲𝗓𝗏. And they've been like great, in terms of rounding up community or user feedback, etc. And the treasury are saying like every year, up to 300,000 tokens can be minted by the DAO, and it can be distributed to people building on Melon. So there's like this direct link, like if you're building or if you're a developer on Melon, you're earning in Melon token and you create value that makes people want to use the protocol, the value of your token that you earn goes up. That's like literally the only way you can acquire Melon tokens unless you buy them on exchange.
Yeah, and that's a great way to align incentives. We've seen that as some of the best distribution. You want to keep the tokens in the hands of people that are going to accrue the value. So that's not always a philosophy for a lot of these protocols, but the ones that really have their incentives aligned seem to keep it that way. Andy, you said, are just about out of time. Is there anything else that you want to kick off?
Yeah, I've got one last question for Mona. We got a price prediction here for end of 2021. What is the price of 1 Bitcoin?
End of 2021. Yeah. Oh, that's interesting. I'm really bullish on Bitcoin in 2021 and crypto in general, actually. And I'm also like known to be wrong. So let's see. I'm gonna predict. I think I'm gonna predict like $55,000.
Nice.
55.
Very, very bullish and very conservative at the same time for some people. which is kind of crazy
for everyone's sake.
Awesome.
We might break all-time highs by the time this is posted. I think we will.
Yeah. That's crazy actually. Wow, this has been a wild year.
Yeah, totally. I think it's great. It feels like crypto got like forgotten about and was hated for a while from kind of, people outside of the seriously core passionate people. And it feels like that's all coming back now. And I'm really excited about it.
Yeah, it's tight. Well, hey, Mona, that was a banger of a cast. If you're still listening, guys, that was awesome. I hope you got a lot from that. And it was a pleasure, Mona. We appreciate you coming on, and I'm glad that we can make time for this.
So much fun. Great to be here, guys. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, that was super. Thanks for coming on. And we'd love to do it again sometime, maybe after V2 is launched and we got this running. We can have a recap and kind of a takeaway on our first maybe month of being a fund manager on Melon.
Sure, let's do it.
Yeah.
Awesome.
All righty, guys. Peace.
All right.
Thanks for listening to the DeFi by Design podcast. Until next time, DeFi Slate Team.